כל השנה הלכו בכל יום מובטח לו שהוא בין העולם הבא. בעזרת השם, today is the 27th of month of Shiru, Thursday, 5th day of the week of Parashat Shabbat Bereshit. Bezat Hashem, we will be discussing today two mitzvot, mitzvah d'oraita number 45. We're not allowed to sell a maidservant. We'll see what that means. And also mitzvah number 46, we're not allowed to lessen the time to spend with your wife. All right, those two mitzvot are very chashuvot, as all of them are. Bezat Hashem mitzvot are mukdash le'nishmat, all the people who were ruthlessly murdered by the Hamas, unfortunately, this week, and all the previous years. And unfortunately, Hashem has allowed it for whatever the reasons are. As we know, we don't understand Hashem, but Bezrat Hashem, we are not here to question Hashem, and we don't even have to understand. We know that this is what Hashem does, and it's all for the ultimate good, as it says in this parashat Bereshit, Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, v'hinu hu tov me'od. As we already explained before many times, that Hashem is saying that He saw all the evil of this world and all the good in the world, and it all played out for the best, as it says, Vayar Elohim et kol asher asa, and Hashem saw everything that He created, v'hinu hu tov me'od, and it's great, and it's all good. So that's what it is. That's the ultimate goal, and Bezat Hashem, we have to live our lives as such. And we already said that we have to find out the reason why it happened on Shabbat is because our Shabbat is weak. We are not so diligent in Shabbat observance or enjoyment of Shabbat at least. And also it had to happen to be that it's Shabbat Simchat Torah, which again indicates that if it had to happen on that day, it's because our learning of Torah is not strong enough. With that said, Bezat Hashem, let's learn Torah. Gamken, the refuah shlema of all the people who are in the hospitals, all the Jews all around the world, Bichlalam, Chaya Bat Leah, Yosef Chaim Efrat, Yaakov, Israel, Daniel Ben Angela, refuah shlema lekol cholei Am Yisrael. Bezat Hashem is starting mitzvah number 45. Shelo yimkor ama ha'ivriya, okay, shekol mi sheyikneh ama ha'ivriya, lo yimkerena le'adam acher le'olam. So a person who went ahead, and as we already discussed yesterday, that one of the greatest chasadim Hashem gave the Jewish nation, especially for the poor people, that a father able to sell his daughter to a rich family, and there in the rich family she will get married to either the owner or to the original owner or to the son of the owner. In this way, Bezat Hashem, she'll become a wealthy lady. So in that case, what happens is, if now the master who bought her, there's a prohibition 45, he's not allowed to sell it to somebody else, even another Jew. Ever. Sheneimar, as it says in Shemot chapter 21, pasuk chet, le'am nochri lo yimshon lemochra b'migdo ba, to another nation. Le'am nochri over here means le'am, to a nation. Really doesn't mean a nation, talking about anybody else who is not, what's his name, who was not involved in the original purposes. He cannot take her over. Pirshu ketergumo ligvar achoran. Over here, the uncles translate. It doesn't mean a nation. Lam Hebrew word means a nation. Nochri means other, but the uncles says no. Ligvar achoran, to another man. Ularchik adavar neimar belashon zeh. And in order to distance it, to make it very strong statement, the language is used as such. כלומר, שדומיו לענייה הקטנה אם מוכרה לאדם אחר, שנית כאילו אם קרנה לעם הנוכרים. You have to understand the severity and the delicacy of, not just delicacy, the mindset of this girl. You have to understand her mindset. She's like being sold to another nation. To her, that's what it sounds like. Okay, and therefore the Torah talks in that language. The Torah wanted us to understand that the importance of making this child, chas v'shalom, we don't want to break her. We don't want her to feel like muznach, like abandoned completely. Don't forget, her father sold her. You understand what we're talking about here? Her father sold her, even though there are good intentions, and even though there are good intentions, not all good intentions are and the result have good effects. So in that case, because of that, we want to be very, very delicate with her and not to harm her even more. So by this master selling her to another man, even he's a Jew and he's a big tzaddik, still would make that roshem, will make that appear to that little girl that she's being sold like to another nation. So again, we are stressed over here to be compassionate at all times as much as possible. בשורשי המצווה, שרצה לזכות זכותנו וציוונו להתנהג במידת החמלה האהובה לפניו. The purpose of this mitzvah is, again, we understand that we just explained that if it's going to make her feel like selling her to another Jewish man is going to make it feel like being sold to another nation. And again, we can't stress enough that we are commanded to be normal people, to be caring person. Chas v'shalom. What kind of a Jew doesn't have a feeling for another person? So therefore, then that's the reason why Hashem commanded us that you're not allowed to do that. דיני המצווה כתוב למעלה במצוות ייעוד. Again, so same thing we already discussed many times about this mitzvah of what age she has to go out for free, at what even with signs, even without we said already mitzvah 44. It's actually a mitzvah to let her go out as soon as the master discovered that she's not going to be befitting him or his or to be his daughter-in-law or his wife. So in that case, he has to send her out right away. And of course, the mitzvah is only could be performed at a time where all the Jewish people are living in Eretz Kodesh, and when there is Yovel. And after that, since we don't have that, it's not shayach these days. Mitzvah number 46. So now we're going to be discussing an issue between a man and wife. Now, what happened was the Torah specifically indicates that we're talking about this girl. So a man had a wife already, right? So he bought this maidservant to be his wife's helper. And later on they decided, you know what? She's a good girl. She has good midot. She has good attributes. And she's going to be a big thing for the family. So the man decides to marry her, okay? Or he decides to give her to his son. Now, so both of them are prohibited for diminishing her time, meaning a woman needs time every time. Specifically when she goes to mikveh, then there is during different times when the husband is supposed to be with his wife. The Gemara outlines depends on his livelihood, what kind of business he does, what kind of panasah he makes, what, where, and how, what kind of, if he's a traveler or he's a sailor. So there's a lot of rules involved in how much time a man has to give to his wife. And also the Beit Din could actually force him to be with his wife. If she has any complaints, she goes to the Beit Din, and if not, he has to give her a get and divorce her and pay her the ketuvah. So there's a lot of things that are involved in there. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Now, why did we discuss, in reality, this relates to all women, every woman, not just the maidservant. But now, since we're talking about a maidservant, the Torah included the mitzvah number 46, specifically where you might have a total diminishment, since you're saying, this is a maidservant, she was a maidservant before I married her, or the son is before I gave it to her son, so now the son has less obligations to her. The Torah tells you, no, even in this case, you're obligated to give her all the time that she needs. Shekor kone ama ha'ivriya v'yada. Anyone who acquired a maidservant and he married her, or he gave her to his son, shelo igra la she'era kesota ve'onata. Chas v'shalom, he should not diminish from her food, sustenance, clothing, and her time period. It says in the Torah, Shemot, chapter 21, pasuk 10, upirush, right? That's the pasuk. The pasuk is she'era, is not allowed to take away from her the food, clothing, and her time. That was in chapter 21 and Shemot, pasuk 10. Upirush she'er. What is she'er? What does the word she'er means? Mazon, food. Ukesud. Okay, kesud is much more as its own word. Kesud means clothing. Ve'onah. What is onah? Onah over there means derech eretz. What is appropriate behavior between man and a woman when they get married. That also is prohibited from being diminished from her, meaning lessening than what she needs. ובכלל, לאו זה כל בנות ישראל גם כן. You have to understand that all the women are involved in this prohibition. The men are prohibited to behave to their wives to like this, to diminish his obligations to them in these three aspects: food, clothing, and time. All women are prohibited. Men are prohibited from giving to diminishing his obligations to the women, to their wives. וכאן מחובר הדברים, אם לזו לא יגרע קושי כן לאחרות בנות אחורינו. So the Torah tells us, even in this case where you took a maidservant, so you might think you have a less obligation to her. The Torah tells you you're not allowed to. So for sure from there we learn, if from her, then all other wives, all other women that a man has, all other women of North Israel, have, even what's in the case where they're not even maidservants, for sure you're obligated. Sorry, we're doing Tari today on Thursday because of the Tari Tzibur that was called by the Rabbanan. So I'm a little bit, I guess, didn't have my coffee. וזה שכתוב במשפט, הבנות יעשה לה כמשפט. And the Torah tells you, כמשפט, he should do for her like the rules of all other women. אמרו במחילתא שהוא בא ללמד ונמצא ללמד שהבנות למדות ממנו. So if the Torah here outlines, there is nowhere in the Torah you're going to find what you're supposed to do with your wife, what you're obligated to your wife. But since the Torah tells us here, where it's related to the maidservant, that you're making her your wife, and it's telling you that those three things you cannot diminish, so now you learn for your regular wife, who was not a maidservant. We learn from the way that the mitzvah, or the rules of this mitzvah, it's written in Masechta Ketuvot, page 56, first side. המתנה עם אשתו על מנת שאין לך עלי שאר כסות ועונה מעד דינו. חס ושלום, if a man says to his, before he marries a woman, or maybe after marriage, or he tells her, you know what, I'll marry you on condition that you cannot demand from me food, clothing, and also time whenever you want, or whatever is coming to you. What happens in that case? So, ומה שאמרו, so that's already discussed in Ketuvot. ומה שאמרו שם, also over there in page 61, שהאישה עולה עם הבעל ואינה יורדת. What is the man? Okay, אינה יורדת, הבעל למעדו בנישואי עמו, והוא צריך לספק את צרכיה כפי עושרו ומעמדו, אף שהייתה רגילה, לפחות מכך, ואם הייתה רגילה ליותר ממעמדו, אינה יורדת למעדו בנישואי עמו, ועליו לספק. Oh, so the Rabbi says over here like this. What does that mean? That a woman goes up with him and doesn't go down? Meaning the stature. It all depends on stature. If he took a first-class citizen, first-class citizen, if he's, let's say, he is in a second class, and she's in a third class, right? Lower class. What happens is, she, when she marries him, he has to treat her like a second class, like himself. But what happens if she's in a first class and he's in a second class? Somehow the marriage got through. He has to support her like a first class. She doesn't go down to his level. That's what it means. So in the beginning we say that in the case where she goes up, that the Beit Din actually could force him. Let's say he has Shalom is in the middle class, and then he's treating her like a lower class, right? So then the Beit Din could force him to treat her like the middle class that he is, just exactly like he is. But in the other case where she's a higher class and he's the lower class, in that case he has to go and provide for her like she's a higher class. Now, how does he do that? That's a big question. ועניין חילוק העונות שהוא לפי כובד אומנות האיש. What about sleeping with his wife? It all depends on his labor, what his body is capable. עד שאמרו זכרונם לברכה, as our sages told us over there in כתובות, page 61 of the second side, שעונת הספן פעמיים בשנה. Anyone who is a sailor has to be twice a year with his wife. V'hagamar pa'am b'chodesh. Anyone who travels with a donkey through the desert, once a month he has to be with his wife. V'talmid chacham pa'am ad b'shavua. Any talmid chacham who learns Torah full time, full week, doesn't go to work, he has to be with his wife once a week, obligated. V'ra'ui lo shetiyeh le'el Shabbat, and it's best obviously for Shabbat night. V'yet pratem mevuarim, and the rabbis explain over there more details. Beseder nashim b'fizur. Throughout the entire Shas in Masechta in the Sidra of Nashim, all right, all the rules, all the Gemarot of Nashim, it discusses this Mitzvoth, how a man is obligated to behave with his wife. ונוהגת מצווה זו לעניין בת חורין, בכל מקום ובכל זמן, בזכרים. This mitzvah of ben, specifically designed for men, how to treat his wife, is an obligation. It's everywhere for a man to treat his wife properly. ועובר עליה וגרע לאשתו אחת משלוש אלה מרצונו על צד שיכוון להחריבה. And if chas v'shalom, a man who is able to provide all those three things, and he is not providing it just to make her suffer, chas v'shalom, avar alav, he transgressed an aveira every time. V'hu ke'over ala hazcharat hamelech, and it's as if he is transgressing against the king's command. Avar en lokin alav zeh lefi she'en bo maaseh, but he doesn't get lashed for this avera, not sleeping with his wife, or not giving her food, or not giving her clothing. Why? Because in reality, he didn't do anything physically. He didn't do physically anything. He just prevented her from getting certain things. Oh, in that case, he doesn't get punished. We already know that. The only time a person gets punished is when he does something lepol, he does something actually. And here, since he's not doing something actually, he's just being nasty or whatever, or being a bad person, or they say in England, in London, in England, they say naughty boy. He's not behaving properly. In that case, he doesn't get punished because there is no action. That's that Hashem from Beit Din, but Hashem will punish this person severely, going against the king's command, and obviously causing harm and pain to another person, which is the worst thing a person could do. And Bezat Hashem should still constantly protect Am Israel, and no harm should befall us, and all those that are harmed should get saved and healthy, and all those captives should be released immediately. Bezat Hashem, Atzlacha Rabba.